right. Well, what do you think, Basil? Should we get started?
Sure.
Okay, good. All right, I'm sure some people will come in late, and that's fine. We're just going to tell everyone a little bit, give you a little bit of an overview about what we're going to talk about here today. Hopefully your speakers are turned up so you can hear everything. And we're going to do about 40 minutes of presentation. We usually have a track record of going a little bit over. This is a no-fluff webinar. We're not selling anything here, so you don't need to worry about that. A lot of times webinars are just geared to try and sell you something. But this is something that Basil and I have been talking about for quite a while, doing this a webinar like this, because there are so many people in the legal profession, so many attorneys that are not happy where they are right now, whether it's what they're practicing or not practicing or whatever. And so we're going to talk about a lot of those ideas. We're going to save a chunk of time, about 20 minutes at the end, for Q&A. So if you haven't been on a webinar before, I imagine a lot of people have, but I like to get out an old-fashioned pen and paper to take notes and close out all other windows, because I find that even if I say to myself that I'll watch it later on the recording, I usually don't. So it's much better to take the time in the first go-round to take notes, and I think there's going to be a lot of different ideas that are going to come out of today's webinar. And if you know anyone else who didn't get a chance to sign up for this and want to get emailed the recording, you can send them that link, which is down below, calawreport.com/webinar, and they should be able to sign up. So kind of an overview of what we're going to be talking about here today. We're going to give you ideas on where you can go. We're going to give you some background on the history of the legal profession, how it's changed over the last 40 years or so. Talk about some growth industries in the law and also outside of the law, and different ways of analyzing that, different ways of looking at where there's growth. And talk about some good ideas, good jobs for non-practicing lawyers, people who've got law degrees but are interested in doing something else, whether that's starting a business or whatever, or working for another business. And then we're going to talk about some examples of some successful non-practicing lawyers. There are lots of them out there, and I'm sure others will think of some that we don't cover. So Basil's on the line. Basil, you there?
I am here.
Good. Okay. Let me tell you about Basil. He's an attorney and an expert witness, and we've done I don't know how many people on the line were on our last webinar, but we did a really interesting webinar where we talked about all the different companies he started or invested in or been really intimately involved in. And it was really interesting because he's been involved in founding a restaurant chain, aquarium, a gas station, a law firm, commercial real estate brokerage, and holding down practicing law all at the same time. I don't know how he's done it all. And he also was most recently president of the UC Hastings Foundation, so he's worked a lot with recent law graduates. And so this is kind of an issue that he's really cared a lot about, and hence why he wanted to do this webinar. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm an attorney and small business advisor with the Corcoran law firm in San Rafael, which is in Marin County, California, for those of you who are familiar with that area. Most of my clients are small businesses and entrepreneurs and real estate investors. And depending on when you signed up for this webinar, it might have been at calawreport.com, or it might have been at Small Business Revolution, because I just changed the domain to focus it a little bit more. And we do a number of monthly teleseminars and webinars with entrepreneurs and business owners. So we'll tell you about those in the future, and hopefully you'll be interested in joining those as well. So Basil, you want to just start with talking about the background here, or, why we all are talking about this issue?
Well, as you've indicated, there's a large number of unhappy lawyers, unhappy with their practice, unhappy with their job. At the same time, there are too many lawyers, frankly. Statistically, the number of lawyers has grown dramatically, and we now have approximately 45,000 new law graduates every year in the U.S., and the job market for them in normal times produces about 25,000 new jobs every year. And so there's a real issue there. In addition to that, some studies have shown that 5 years after the graduation from law school, only 55% or so are actually practicing law, and the other 45% are doing something else. And this again, these statistics are from more normal times and not from the last 3 years. Uh, my my work with UC Hastings has, in large part, focused upon job creation and job identification for graduates. So I think that all law school graduates, particularly in the Bay Area, which is a heavily saturated market, need some assistance here. And what we're looking at, both at Hastings and today, is finding jobs in the legal field that perhaps are not as traditional as used to be, and also outside the legal field. We want good jobs for lawyers, good jobs for those who've graduated who choose not to practice law. So given these statistics, it looks like, well, one thing I should say, UC Hastings made a policy decision last year, and that was to reduce their class size by 20%, which is pretty substantial. They're the first top-tier law school to do that, but other law schools are now talking about it. And it looks to me like there is going to be a trend towards reducing the size of law schools, and I'm hoping that that will actually occur. Not that I don't think that law is a great education. My daughter's in law school. I encourage it for everybody who wants to do it. It's a great education, but recognize that you're going to have to make some adjustments to get jobs, and you may consider not working in the legal field. The changes that have occurred to the legal profession in the last 50 years are dramatic. 50 years ago, 40 years ago, just about, when I started, the extent of our technology was yellow pads and pens, telephones, carbon paper, and bike messengers, and that was it. No law firm had a computer. Nobody had cell phones, fax machines, scanners. Of course, the internet, email, none of that existed. And as a result of the changes that have occurred in the last 50 years technologically, there's been a lot of changes in the legal profession as well. Back in the 1960s, there were about 50,000 lawyers in California, and now there's roughly 5 times that. I think that a lot of this arises from what Alvin Toffler labeled future shock. Future shock is an increasing pace of change. He wrote a book by that title in about 1970, and he predicted that changes in technology, communications, and the speed of things, speed of life, would increase and thereby cause many other changes. And it would result in changes not just in our work, but in our personal lives and the way we live, and that it would cause a great deal of stress to many people as a result of having to adapt to constantly changing circumstances, which are accelerating every year, really.
I'm sure he wasn't specifically talking about the legal profession, but it's amazing how true that is. I mean, you can graduate and then from law school, and then 5 or 10 years later, the practice has changed dramatically, even from when you graduated. Much less someone who graduated 20 or 30 years earlier.
Yeah. My practice historically has been representing lawyers and law firms. That's what I've done for some 35 years, and I have seen lawyers go through dramatic changes. There are those who have composite careers. That is to say, they're no longer practicing law full-time. They're doing 1 or 2 or even 3 other things, maintaining a smaller practice at the same time. There's other lawyers who are what I call serial lawyers. They change careers every 10 years. And I know lawyers who started out in asbestos claims, and they moved to toxic shock, breast implants. New kinds of mass torts are created every 5 to 10 years or so, and they operate. They're busy for 5 to 10 years, and then they decline and ultimately die out. And frankly, that's exactly one thing that's happened to me. when I started practicing legal malpractice law, it was almost unheard of. And my firm gave me a small legal malpractice case to handle against a big name lawyer. And I did pursue it, and he was a gentleman. We settled it, and all of a sudden I became the expert in legal malpractice because there wasn't anybody else around who'd ever handled one.
So by default, it was you.
Now, in the 80s, the number of claims rose dramatically from almost zero to about 19 claims per 100 attorneys per year. And that continued throughout the 80s, and I had an extremely busy practice through the 90s, but then it started to decline. And looking back at it, it has a lot to do with the fact that all of these cases were filed, and then many of them went up on appeal, and it established for the first time, publicly and in print, what the law of legal malpractice was. And so as lawyers became educated, they began to realize that these were very difficult cases to prove, and they declined to pursue them. In addition to that, the number of lawsuits filed also dropped. And what I found was that in the mid to late 90s, my practice started to decline. So I do primarily now real estate and entrepreneurial law.
Now, sorry, Basil, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. But one of the things that you've talked about related to the future shock theory or doctrine, however you'd describe it, is kind of some of the social problems that have come out of this. Can you kind of explain that a little?
Yeah. Future shock is a form of what's called culture shock. It's disorientation, both in individuals and in systems. The system could be government, could be a social network, could be a corporation, whatever. And it results from enormous structural change, which is transforming society from what Toffler labeled as an industrial to a super-industrial society, meaning that it's international with massive quantities of available information that is available to the general public. And in his opinion, a number of social problems are the direct result and caused by future shock. He gave an example. In one 5-year period starting in 1955, there were dramatic innovations made that changed life for pretty much everybody that followed. He talked about, in those 5 years, certain things arose. The birth control pill was invented, universal television for everyone, commercial jet travel on a broad scale, along with many other medical, scientific, and technological innovations. And over time, this triggered deep and widespread changes in all aspects of our life, including our sex lives and our worldviews and also how we work.
And it's funny, when
in the 90s, we saw another series of changes with computers and internet and so on that have resulted in dramatic changes as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, just it's funny, when we were talking about this earlier, it made me think, well, it's hard to even compare today having that much change as when you describe, the birth control, the impact that had, and television and everything. But when you think about it, I mean, today, really, the changes that have been happening just with Facebook and Twitter and, everyone having ubiquitous smartphones, it's pretty dramatic.
Well, those are just in the last couple of years. If you think about it, we read today in the newspaper about commercial space travel. But we look at everyday things like executive suites. I heard the other day on the internet that there is a new internet web page called Airbed. Instead of paying $400 or $200 a night in a hotel, you could actually stay in someone's home using this web page for $20, $25 a night. I think that could dramatically transform travel, just as commercial jetliners transformed travel in the 60s.
Yeah, it really has. And if you break down some of these individual items that you mentioned here, blogs, the impact that's had on the journalism industry and how much that's turned things around, you change things for that, or smartphones. I mean, you think about, you don't really have to pay for long distance a lot of the time these days. Now you can call all the way across the country without paying long distance fees. Or Twitter, the way that's changed communication. It's pretty dramatic, the changes that we're experiencing now.
Well, we'll see how some of these changes
and I
impact
imagine some
on the
people
law.
right now are probably thinking, well, what the heck does this have to do with practicing law? So
yeah,
maybe you should kind of
but
explain
it really does.
how
and
that
for this
affects
reason,
the legal
John,
profession and how
there is
take
no
advantage
aspect of our social, civil, cultural,
Did I lose you, Basil?
or economic work life that is not.
Basil.
Oh, am I here?
Oh, Basil, you there? Sorry, everyone. Looks like we're having kind of a technical difficulty.
Sorry. Can you hear me, John? John, are you there?
To get Basil back on the line here.
Okay. I'll call in again. Yeah. John, I don't know what happened, but I'll call in again.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
All right, guys, we're getting Basil back on the line. Sorry about that. Hang with.
Hello, John? Hello? Is anyone there?
Oh, hello, everyone. Hello? Basil, you there? Oh, looks like I got kicked off the line after Basil got kicked off. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. Basil, you there? Oh, they can hear. Someone said we can hear you both, but I don't hear Basil. Very strange.
Welcome to GoToWebinar, web events made easy.
Okay.
Is that okay? Is that going to work?
Yeah, I guess so. Let's see. Let's see.
Sure. It's
All right. All right, everyone. Do you hear? Let's see if everyone can hear. Wait. If someone can hear both of you, someone said. Okay. All right. All right, Basil.
Very good. So we
Sorry,
were
everyone.
just talking about the law. And the law affects every aspect of our lives. It invades every aspect of our lives. There is no aspect of our social, cultural, political, and economic lives that is not regulated by law. That may be an unfortunate fact to some, but that is the reality. And therefore, legal jobs are going to be generated in all changes of society. When there is a new field, a new invention, a new social network, all of them are affected by law and create legal work.
So, what I love about the opportunity, I guess, is one way of looking at it. Is there are different ways of analyzing opportunities that you can take on. You can look at it one of two ways. You can look at all the changes as a kind of a pessimistic, glass is half empty kind of way, or you can look at it as glass is half full. I'm kind of more the glass is half full type of person, and so I like to think about different ways of looking at it. And so, let's talk a little bit about the different ways of thinking about opportunities that you can engage in today's society.
Well, I agree with that, John. Let me say that those who have access to information can locate it and assimilate it and utilize it are going to be more successful in the future than ever before. And unfortunately, a lot of those people who don't have that capacity, those abilities, I think it's going to hurt them in the long run. But in terms of looking at changes in the legal profession and how to take advantage of them, I do have a few suggestions. Number one is to always check the demographics. In other words, if let's suppose you are considering a job in Crescent City, California. Well, all you have to do is go on the internet and determine what the population growth is, what the ratio of lawyers to per thousand citizens there, what the economic base is, what the average income and cost of living are. All those are accessible easily now, especially to lawyers and law students who are trained in researching and analyzing.
Just a little project like that could have taken you weeks at the library a while ago.
And you had to rely upon just one or two sources at best, whereas nowadays there's ways to rapidly fact check and determine that. And so by following the demographics, you may decide that you would rather practice forestry law in Crescent City than do maritime law in Seattle. Because even though the wage scale is substantially lower, so is the cost of living, and that's just a matter of preference. Secondly, we all have to follow the law, and it's important to take note when you're reading about new cases, new statutes, new causes of action, new theories, to look at them from the perspective of, is this going to generate a lot of legal work in the future? Is this something that we are going to be looking at uh, that all the time in 5 to 10 years? Because, for instance, healthcare law has emerged as a growth area of the law. So has intellectual property. Social network law is on the cusp of becoming a specialty. I know a law firm in San Francisco that handles a lot of cases of defamation and of invasion of privacy arising from social network publications.
Okay, so let's take that one example. So let's say that you are interested in social network law as something. What would be a way of going? We might be getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but of going about exploring that if you're interested in it.
Okay, you would start always with the law. And so you could, for instance, go on Westlaw or LexisNexis and look up Facebook and determine what the law is and what kinds of claims were brought, what the disputes were and how they were resolved, and what the new law is about Facebook. Obviously, we haven't had social networks like Facebook and LinkedIn and all of the others until just recently, and so law is going to develop in that area over time. So first we identify what the existing law is. Then we can do the demographic type search and determine, first of all, if you want to litigate against Facebook, do you want to be in Silicon Valley or San Francisco where they're located? Or are you going to be somewhere else where there's a high level of Facebook subscribers that might generate those kinds of claims? All that can be done in demographic searches.
That's a good way of going about it. So, and then I assume you mentioned here community involvement, activities, and organizations. So, looking at the other attorneys who are involved in social network law and joining the groups that they belong to and things like that, I imagine.
Yeah, that's a great way to try to make contacts in a particular subspecialty. There are innumerable legal organizations uh, that are composed of members of a particular field of law. And joining one of them will give you basically almost instant contact to all of those practicing lawyers in that field. It might be a tax law association. What we're doing at Hastings is if a graduate doesn't have a job after they take the bar exam, and let's say they want to practice law in Los Angeles and they want to do entertainment law, we find them an alum who practices entertainment law in Los Angeles, and we put them together, and that lawyer becomes the basis of their new burgeoning network of entertainment lawyers. That lawyer will advise them on getting a job, will inform them about what kind of jobs are available, and will refer them to law firms that might be hiring. That's why we call it the Airtime Program, AIR. There are other schools that do similar things, and if they don't, they ought to get started because the market is getting tougher all the time.
Okay, so let's. I know that one way that you talked about breaking this down was looking at the subject matter areas of law and looking at geographic areas of law and then legal industry areas as well. That was another one that you had talked about. You want to
Sure.
kind of explain that?
Okay. Yeah, the great thing is that, as I said, the law is ubiquitous. It regulates everything. And so lawyers are needed for pretty much everything. And if you have a specific subject matter area of the law that you're interested in, then you have to say, well, where is that law practiced most often? You're not going to do maritime law in Kansas. You're unlikely to do water law in New York City. You have to go where the work is. So if you've selected a particular interest that you have or specialty, then you have to consider geographically where it's going to be busy. The other thing is you have to ask yourself, is this a growth area of law? Is this an area that is going to become valuable, economically feasible for me? Some people refer to water as the new gold, and that's certainly true in the West. In all the Western United States, water law is a rather important area of law, growing all the time, depending upon the particular kinds of usage.
Are we going to have buy water stores on every corner at some point soon?
Well, the difficulty is as something becomes more valuable, and it doesn't matter whether it's a commodity like gold, or if it could be something like water, it could be something like views from one's home. As they become increasingly valuable, they become more often subjects of litigation. And I know an attorney, for instance, here in Marin County, which has the highest per capita income in the state, who specializes in nothing but tree law. That is to say, people utilize trees for privacy, and people oppose trees because they block their views. And in areas of Marin with bay views, where there's issues involving trees, they are hotly litigated. I have seen cases that where the fees just for one side have exceeded $100,000. I've had a couple of them myself involving just trees
That's amazing.
and privacy and views and all of that. So
I think a lesson for people who don't have maybe if they don't live in an area that isn't, trees aren't the issue or views aren't the issue, is look at what is the equivalent for them, for their geographic area.
what is the industrial base?
Yeah.
What are assets of value in that particular geographic area?
Yeah.
Now, geography is incredibly important as well, just generally for lawyers. The San Francisco legal market's pretty much saturated. The difficulty is, of course, that the law schools in San Francisco and in the Bay Area have graduates, most of whom want to practice in the financial district, and there simply are not sufficient jobs there to absorb all of those people. So we're encouraging graduates to go elsewhere. Interestingly, last year, UC Hastings placed 42 students, 10% of their graduating class, in jobs overseas, in Asia, in Europe, in the Middle East, and South America. And these are with companies that are very much desiring American lawyers. At the same time, Hastings has established a graduate program for overseas lawyers who need an American law degree to practice law in the US. And so they have an MLL program in American jurisprudence, in addition to a new MLL program in biolife law, which could be the new high tech, in conjunction with UCSF. Also healthcare law. So we're looking at subject matter areas as well as geographic areas. And it's interesting if you look at the demographics. You could go online and look at the U.S. Department of Labor Statistics, Bureau of Statistics, and see how many lawyers per 1,000 people are in a particular state or county. Interestingly, California has the eighth highest number of lawyers per capita in the country. It's over 41, whereas there are other states that have 20 or even a little bit less than 20 per 1,000 people, which is a factor. Now, within California, Stanislaus County, Modesto, is seen as a growth area for law because there is growth there. There is wherever there is building of homes or shopping centers or factories, there is going to be growth in business, and it's widely considered that that is one of the at least this was before the recession, but was one of the most likely to grow areas in the state. But commonly, lawyers can go to Fresno, Sacramento, San Diego, and smaller towns and get jobs with comparative ease. And then they can always come back to San Francisco after they've got a couple of years' experience under their belt. Last year, my firm hired 2 lawyers from Sacramento. We don't hire law school graduates, but we do hire experienced lawyers, and that's what we did. So those are other possibilities too.
So it's kind of it's really useful for someone to think about this in a couple different ways. Growth in terms of subject areas, and we've got a list here on the screen: social media law, intellectual property, biolife. I think you've mentioned most of these. Cloud-based technology. That's kind of interesting because that's a growth area. So looking at it in terms of subject areas, and then in terms of geographic areas, and then the last one you mentioned was in terms of legal technology or legal industry areas. Can you explain that a little more?
Yes. What's interesting is in the last 40 years, in addition to utilizing cell phones and email and the internet and fax machines and all of that, another interesting thing has occurred, and that's that there has sprung up in the legal profession, around the many law firms in the U.S., a whole service industry that does nothing but serves lawyers in a variety of ways. Uh, when I started practicing law, you had process servers and you had bike messengers, and that was really about it. Nowadays, with all of the computerized data retrieval, with vast quantities of documents involved in litigation, with highly specialized areas of administrative law, been a whole industry that has evolved. I've become an expert in legal malpractice cases um, simply because I've been around for a fair amount of time. And although there are fewer cases today, uh, I have a certain number of decades experience in that area that a lot of people don't have.
So so I could see it as someone who, let's say, you've been working for a small firm and you got really good at doing PowerPoint presentations, or you really enjoyed putting together little videos that you used in the opening argument at trial. So maybe you look for a company that does that, or maybe you found a company that does that too.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, I know lawyers. If you look at the website Avo, for instance, which was founded by lawyers, that there are so many advertising firms, advertising businesses, web pages, newsletters, and so forth for lawyers nowadays to help them acquire somewhat shrinking percentage of business that's out there. But in addition to that, there is document banking, document storage, document access, e-filing services, e-discovery services, document management. And John, you know this. There are lawyers now that don't have secretaries, and they do all of their transcribing via an 800 number to the Philippines, where they dictate over the phone and are emailed back the rough draft of the document for that lawyer's personal finalization for about $3 an hour. My point is that if you don't want to work as a lawyer, you can still find a lot of jobs or even start your own company in legal service fields because they have grown dramatically. And for instance, let me give you an idea of what's happened. California has dozens of title companies here. In the old days, lawyers used to do closings. They would get the buyer and the seller together in a room. They would have done their own title search, the lawyer, that is, and he charges them for the escrow and all of that and did it all himself. But that was a rather cumbersome process and was more expensive than it needed to be. And so what was created were title companies that do the same work using non-lawyer personnel at a reduced price and at the same time issue title insurance so that it's a better, more efficient system all around. And what we're seeing with this rise in technology is that lawyers don't have the kind of bread and butter work such as drafting wills or trusts or leases, even contracts, because there's software for all of that. And it does make it easier for those lawyers who continue to do that kind of work, but it means that a lot of people are not going to be going to lawyers to draft a will anymore. All they have to do is go to the probate code, and there's a statutory will in there, and you just fill in the blanks. So what we're seeing is increased systematization of various legal work that had occurred in the past to make it less expensive, more efficient, but to diminish the amount of work available to lawyers.
So I'm sure with the case of title companies, it probably was a lawyer or an enterprising non-lawyer who saw how cumbersome it was and expensive and saw an opportunity there. And I'm sure that there are other opportunities like that that are existing now, whole industries that'll be created. But, I'm sure there's a number of people on this call who are interested in fields beyond practicing law, not even the technical industry areas within the legal profession or related to the legal profession. But you want to talk kind of broadly about the categories that you find for those?
Sure. If you go on the U.S. Department of Labor statistics, the most common other areas for lawyers to work in is education, government, and business. And what's interesting is that those lawyers working in business management, and so forth, they earn more money than the average practicing lawyer. And what we're finding at the UC Hastings Foundation is that our biggest donors are not practicing lawyers. Our biggest donors tend to be those who were entrepreneurial and went out and started a company or companies, developed an idea. And if we look around, a lot of companies have been started by lawyers, and I could name half a dozen that are started by Hastings alums. And these are people that some of whom I actually knew. But from Shakey's Pizza to Quiznos sandwiches to Avo to the Sharper Image, Auberge Resorts, Piatti's Restaurants, all started by Hastings alums. And so what we see are that lawyers make very good entrepreneurs. Why? Because of the skills they learn in law school. It's not their knowledge of the law itself. It is their ability to investigate, research, analyze, identify the issues, and respond to them. Lawyers are innately problem solvers, and that is what people do when they're starting businesses. They address problems. For instance, if you're a lawyer and you're working at a law firm and you're handling a particular type of case, and you have to do a lot of tedious work that really isn't efficient to be done by a lawyer. But there are a large number of these cases out there. You could start a company that services law firms handling those kinds of cases using lower paid, less skilled personnel to do it. And this is happening on a regular basis now.
Okay, so now let me identify. There are probably some people on the line here who are thinking, okay, well, I want to get out of practicing law, or I'm already out of the practice of law, and I want to go into some other field. How do I go about that? What do I do?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is identify the field that you want to go into. Now, I will tell you, I know lots of lawyers who were hired away from their law firms by clients, and they went to work for different companies around the country. I know one lawyer in Boise, Idaho, who years ago, he was in his second or third year at Morrison Forrester, was hired away by them and became their chief negotiator and traveled all over the country buying and selling land on behalf of Boise Cascade and did very, very well. Um, so if you have access in that sense, then that is, I think, the first place to look. Now, let's suppose that you want to work in an industry where you don't have an active client. Then I think, again, this is what lawyers do. We investigate, research, and identify. And by going on the internet, you can find the players in any particular field, in any particular industry. And you can also find trade associations and professional groups that you can join and that will give you access to numbers of people who are doing that kind of work or working in that kind of an industry. Interesting, as I said before, um, for lawyers, it seems that specifically the oil and gas industry has resulted in a lot of success for lawyers, and the average salary for lawyers in that industry is nearly double what it is for practicing lawyers nationwide, about not quite 190,000 a year. And I think the average nationwide for lawyers of all ages in all locations is about 112,000 a year. California, it's quite a bit higher, about 100. I think it's 150,000 a year. But again, you have to factor in the cost of living. But in any event, by networking, identifying who you need to know, and then seeking them out, that's how you start your journey on a new career. I would go to those people that you have some sort of indirect contact with. In
Like
other
alums or people you know through your network, or
Exactly.
yeah,
Or perhaps you have a friend in common
yeah,
and ask them not for a job, but ask them for advice. Say you're thinking about getting into that industry and you'd like some information about it. What was it like for them? How did they get in? What did they do? How did they get their first job? Getting them to tell their stories so that you can learn from their advice. And what I'm finding is that the smartest law students are making contacts now, both in the legal field and out, using LinkedIn and other similar sites. And they are commencing their network at a young age, which is a great thing to do. Uh, the key, I think, with contacts like that is to maintain the relationship. Doesn't have to be a weekly telephone call. Once or twice a year, you can send an individual an article about his or her particular industry or field of law. Say, gee, I came across this article and I remember you practice this kind of law. I thought you might be interested in it. Maybe you didn't see it. Once, twice a year, that's all you have to do. And it's easy to search out these things on the internet and find them and just send them an email with a link. But the point is to maintain contact as time passes and also to stick to nuts and bolts. In other words, confine yourself to the specific subject matter that you're interested in, whether it be within the law or outside of it. And you can talk more about personal stuff as the relationship develops and other factors and issues. But your main connection to that person is that they have a job that you would like or that they can give you.
yeah.
So
And one idea that we batted around earlier, which I'll throw out to everyone, is we talked about blogging a little bit earlier, and I think that that's a great way to build your reputation. And one thing you can do that's very easy is you ask people to interview, to allow them for you to interview them, and you record it and you put it up on your blog, and they get a little bit of publicity. They feel honored by it. And then maybe even a third party might read it online, and then you develop a reputation for having done that. So that's an opportunity. It's kind of a modern twist on standard informational interviews by doing that.
if you can identify within the law a new case or a new set of statutes that are designed to regulate some specific business, um, the ideal thing would be to write an article about it and then to send a copy of that article to the law firms that practice that kind of law and say, here's what I know about this area of the law. And I was wondering whether you know of any positions that might be available in your geographic area. Start that way. So, as lawyers, we can research and write, and we can publish. And by doing so, you're establishing your own expertise. which is something that's hard to do in other fields.
Okay, so let's talk about the kind of concrete steps, how people can, what steps they should follow to get a job.
Okay. Number one, of course, follow the demographics. Make sure that you're focusing on a geographic area that is appropriate for your particular specialty. Secondly, identify the growth areas of the law or of social or technological services that you're interested in. Make sure that this is an industry that's not going to be replaced by some new development in 2 years that is going to eliminate it. And that takes some guesswork, of course, and some analysis and a lot of investigation. But I think that's
So
crucial.
maybe cell phone law, not beeper law, would be appropriate at this point.
Absolutely. Third, build your skills in the latest technology. Make sure that you are familiar with the technology, at least so that you could talk about it in that particular area. Um, and also be familiar with working software in that area if you can. For instance, if you want to go into construction law, then you ought to learn how to use construction software. There's all kinds of software out there for architects and contractors on planning and scheduling developments. That's one thing that is of interest, especially in litigation over contract completion and penalties in construction that are built into contracts. If the contractor doesn't finish by a certain date, there's a penalty on the contractor. Anyway, getting back to the technology and the software in those areas, familiarize yourself with that. Read all of the latest decisions in that particular area of the law, and then get involved in the community by joining the appropriate associations and meeting people who are active in that community.
Okay, and then transitioning over, how do you go about it? It seems can be very intimidating for
Well,
people.
pick an area of expertise that you might be interested in, a particular job, a particular field, a particular skill, uh, and start researching. And make sure that this is something you would like to do. I know lawyers, for instance. One was an avid scuba diver, and he ended up opening a scuba shop and doing scuba tours around the world. And another lawyer was liked to ride his bicycle, and he now does high-end bicycle trips in Europe. Now, he still works part-time as a contract lawyer during the winter. In the fall, he goes overseas to Europe and finds new routes for his bike tours. And in the spring and summer, he does the bike tours. So he's busy year around from a number of sources. And he's what I think I called a composite lawyer before, someone who has more than one job.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about if you're a contract lawyer, you have almost zero overhead, but you have a pretty good hourly wage. And you can still do some other career at the same time.
Yeah, that's fun. That's cool. Okay.
So then I always like to rely upon experts, being one myself. And there are many services out there. I'm thinking of Lawyers in Transition in particular. A friend of mine from law school, Hindi Greenberg, started that. She also worked at Morrison Foerster for a while and then clerked for a Supreme Court. But she decided she didn't like the practice of law. And so for 30 some odd years now, she has been uh, an employment career coach, really, for lawyers who wish to do something other than law or to change their lifestyle and the way they practice law.
And she has a book that I think I sent in the series of links that I emailed out to everyone. If not, I'll send it out afterwards, or you can look on Amazon, look for Hindi Greenberg, Hindi Greenberg. She's got a good book on the topic as well. So that's, consulting others who've got expertise, thinking that kind of thing. And then if you want to start a business, how about that? How do you go about that?
The first thing I would do is to devise a business plan, because in the creation of the business plan, you're going to be answering a lot of the concerns and questions that you might have. And there's lots of software out there available for that as well. But the idea is, and it really is all arithmetic, the idea is that you're going to have sufficient revenues that you're going to be able to make it. And the most important thing in the beginning, I think, is to focus on revenue, not on overhead. That's a common mistake that people make because it's relatively easy to adjust and cut overhead. It's very difficult to generate revenue. And so that should be your focus. Where am I going to get the business? How is the money going to come in? How am I going to collect it? How are people going to pay? Uh, how do I anticipate uh, marketing this particular project or program? And what is my area going to be? It could be international, could be national, could be local. You have to focus on that, and that's all part of the business plan.
Yeah.
Identifying your market,
Yeah.
and then doing the arithmetic on the cost of production versus the cost of sale.
Yeah. And using your legal skills you mentioned as well, identifying issues and researching and investigating what would be the appropriate profession for you.
Right.
Yeah.
That again is what we do as lawyers. We're problem solvers, and any new business is a problem in a sense.
Yeah.
And you have to anticipate the kinds of problems that might occur, whether they be economic, legal, or whatever. And so by addressing them at the beginning, you could hopefully head them off.
Now, we're nearing the end of the hour here, so if anyone has any questions, go ahead and you can type them into the question field there. You mentioned some of these folks here. We just got a couple of examples of different attorneys who have started interesting companies here. Richard Thalheimer, who started the Sharper Image, is a Hastings grad. These aren't all Hastings grads.
But they're the ones that I know the
The
best.
ones that Basil knows
but
best.
There's lots of lawyers from all law schools that
Yeah.
have.
And there's Mark Britton, who started Avo, who most people have probably heard of. Piatti Restaurant, which is a regional chain, started by Mark Harmon. Our Little Books, this is an interesting one. You want to talk about Candace?
Yeah, a classmate of mine practiced law for a number of years and decided that she preferred giving advice of a different kind. And so she established a publishing company, Our Little Books. And they're very small books. They're about the size of a pack of cigarettes, but much thinner. And they're sold in stationery stores, grocery stores, things like that. And they cover a variety of topics. Uh, One of them might explain how to retire, how to plan your retirement. And it's only about maybe 35 pages long. It's simple, not a tremendous amount of detail, but sufficient to give you an overall picture and to start your search. And they're rather inexpensive publications. And
And do you know how she got started in that? Or?
I have to ask her that.
Huh.
I really don't know how she got started, but she really does enjoy it. And it covers all aspects of life. It might be something pertaining to your job or economics or planning for retirement, but it might also be social issues. It might also be relationship issues. Um, but Our Little Books is her publication. That was an interesting one.
And even if people are interested and passionate enough about a topic, they can write a book on their own topic and get it published on Kindle these days. It's very easy to do. And I wanted to mention also Lee Burgess, who is someone who I met recently. Interesting. She started Amicus Tutoring, which is a tutoring company. She practiced for a big law firm for a couple of years and didn't like it and decided she really liked teaching. She'd done it in the past, so she decided to do bar exam and LSAT tutoring. And she actually here's another example: Allison Monahan, who started the Girls Guide to Law School, also someone I met recently, who went to Columbia, had a big clerkship, worked at a big law firm, didn't like it. She started this blog called The Girls Guide to Law School, which has been very popular. And the two of them actually have teamed up on two projects called Law School Toolbox and Bar Exam Toolbox as well, which are doing well, I understand. So just kind of sum up some of your thoughts here on.
Well, I think that the first question is, what do you want to do? Do you want to practice law full time? If so, that's great. And then utilize that particular route. The things we've talked about networking, specialization is very important in law these days. Creating a knowledge base in yourself about a particular field of law in which you are interested in practicing. Secondly, do you want to practice full time, part time? What's interesting about American society is that we have, I think, in many people's opinions, uh, too many lawyers. And at the same time, we have a substantial population which is underserved. They can't afford lawyers. Or, I mean, even middle class people cannot afford lawyers. And so, one thing that lawyers are doing is they're finding new ways to practice law that substantially reduce the cost to the client. And some of these ways involve, um, I know lawyers who practice out of their homes. They have no overhead. They meet the client at the client's place of business or home, or they rent a conference room or an office. Right here in this building, we have executive suites with approximately 10 lawyers in them, and they're relatively low cost for lawyers, and they still have an office, conference room, photocopier, and the like. Um, Other lawyers practice contract law. That is to say, they work as a contract lawyer for a variety of law firms on a sporadic or part-time basis. And that way they keep their overhead to a minimum, and it frees up their time to do other things in life. And it might be a second or even third career, or it could be a particular activity which they love to do, um, which in itself, like scuba diving, might lead to a second career. Thirdly, if you don't want to practice law at all, consider a related industry because you do have skills. And related industries are pretty obvious. They're banking, real estate, insurance, or any of the many companies that service law firms or publish materials, LexisNexis and West being two of them, McGraw Hill, uh, that publish documents for lawyers. I know lawyers who become editors for legal publishing companies, and they have been very happy doing that rather than practicing law. Fourth, if you don't want to have anything to do with law, then you have a question of what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And you have to start by identifying what are your experiences and interests. Did you work at a fast food place when you were in high school and actually enjoyed it? Is a restaurant something you would like? Do you have particular experience or skills in some other field? Were you a teacher in a prior life? Could you go back to teaching, or could you perhaps serve as an education lawyer? There are there's a law firm out by Sacramento which does nothing but education law for teaching institutions all over the state of California.
It's amazing how frequently you hear people saying, I had this job as a kid or as a teenager or in college, and I just really enjoyed working in this wine shop, or I really enjoyed doing whitewater rafting tours, or Outward Bound, or whatever it is, and then they find a way to connect it, find a way to start their own company or partner with someone and create a sustainable career, and maybe they don't throw out their legal training at all because they use it in some way for that new profession, or they adapt it to the business world. But you hear that really frequently.
It's funny. My wife is a realtor, and she says people always buy houses that remind themselves of the home in which they grew up.
Hmm.
And what's interesting is that same principle can be applied to careers. When I was in high school in San Francisco and college in Berkeley, I worked at restaurants. And what's funny is that I'm involved today in a restaurant chain. And I think that it's partly because of my prior experience in restaurants. I enjoyed it so much and maintained an interest in it that I wanted to keep doing it.
Okay, great. Well, I think this has been really helpful, and we got a couple of questions that have been submitted so far. So I'm just going to jump straight into those. And if anyone else has any additional questions, feel free to go ahead. So first one we have is someone says, "How about those of us looking to get into a non-legal profession? One possibility that apparently John got involved in is in politics. If I'm interested in getting into politics, even one day being a politician, how shall I best enter that field?" I have some thoughts on it, but I'll let you go ahead.
Okay, well, I think that first of all, see if you can volunteer. in a campaign or for a political official of some sort, serve as an intern, either part time or full time, or simply as a volunteer if you're working full time. Um, I don't, John, you take it from there. You've got much more
Yeah,
experience in that.
well, I started working in politics like around age 21 or so. So it was a very different stage in life, depending on what stage you're in. But I started basically that volunteering internship, getting involved, getting to know the local people. Um, you know, local is the best way to go, in my opinion. There could be state assembly races or state senate that you can get involved in, or supervisors you can get involved. And it's been a great network for me. You meet a lot of interesting people. You can also get involved in raising money. Unfortunately, money is very much a part of politics, and so you can get involved in that. If particularly if you're in a profession, if you're working in a law firm, you know a lot of other lawyers, and if you aren't intimidated by asking them to write big checks, then that's a great way for you to get to know people in politics. What else? What's another way of getting about it? I mean, just showing up and volunteering. And the tough thing is that with politics, you'll find that a lot of it's real bread and butter, walking door to door, calling people on the phone, and so it's easy to get burnt out on that. Unless you have a real love for it, So I encourage you to get involved.
And another area, another way to get involved would be to um, actively participate in some sort of community group. It might be an environmental group, it might be the Chamber of Commerce. But once you get involved, they often offer training programs for those who have an interest in pushing their particular mandate. And so I know in Marin there's a number of training programs for those who wish to become community activists in one area or another.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
great
that's a way.
advice, because you can get involved in a group that is politically active, whether it's the NRA or the Sierra Club, and I'm sure they've got lots of opportunities for you to volunteer. They're always looking for volunteers. So that's a great question. We got another question here. Um, what advice do you have for general litigators looking to switch careers? I've been practicing general commercial litigation at a large international law firm for 7 years. I'd like to find another career, whether that be with the government in-house or in a non-legal profession. However, I'm not sure where to begin, given that I don't have any particular substantive expertise and am a litigator, making in-house employment more challenging. Interesting question.
Well,
Basil?
actually, litigators have skills too. They are adept at communications, at assimilating and summarizing uh, complex factual situations, at learning new things. Litigators are highly sharp-eyed people, and I think that they can be skilled. Their skills are useful in almost any area, but you have to identify the skills that you use as a litigator. And I would say that they are reading and writing and understanding. And you start with that and say, well, what kind of an occupation would have need for those particular skills? You might end up being a book editor, or you could end up being a teacher, or you could be another kind of advocate that perhaps isn't in the court system, uh, the bully pulpit, politics. Look at the skills you've developed, not so much the substantive law you know. And I think that that is what is important in life for lawyers. It's the skills you've acquired and not your knowledge of patent law.
Yeah, I
It's
think
just
we forget, really, particularly if you're working in a law firm, you're surrounded by really smart people all day long. We forget really how well educated you are, and for people who aren't lawyers, how you're viewed as someone who is really a problem solver and who can really dive in. And even if you don't have any substantive knowledge of the new area that you go in, you can really figure it out pretty quickly, even if you don't have a long bit of experience. Obviously, there are going to be a lot of careers that aren't going to be well suited for you, but I think that you'd find if you can stomach the reduction in pay, because in all likelihood you're going to start a little bit lower, you can work your way up pretty quickly. I had a bit of a mentor to me who is a real estate investor, and he encouraged me at one point to just become kind of a low level property manager, work in property management, because I had expressed an interest in real estate. And he said, look, even if you start off low, they're going to know you're qualified. They're going to know you're knowledgeable and that you can work your way up, and you'll work your way up very quickly. So I think that it's a question of, maybe you try and save a bit of a nest egg so that you have some money to maybe supplement the lower income, or you just, take it on the chin and deal with the lower income for a while, and you work your way up. I think that's, good advice. Great question so far, you guys. Feel free to send us some more of them. Another question we got from someone was it's about raising money, and they wanted to know how do they raise money for a new business if they don't have a track record in business?
Well, first of all, anybody going into business who doesn't have experience should most likely partner with somebody smarter and more experienced than they are. And frankly, I've made a career of doing just that. I don't know a lot about, well, I don't really know a lot about restaurants or gas stations or aquariums or anything else, but I was able to partner with people who did, people that I grew to trust and depend upon. And so that's where I would start. Look around you. Then, in terms of fundraising, well, usually family and friends are the best place to start. But again, this is after you've devised a business plan and have gone a fair way, a fair distance along the way. And then beyond that, then you're going to have to look at institutional lenders. If you really have a great idea, you can always go to a venture capitalist, investment banker, but they generally are going to want control before they will lend. And that is an issue for a lot of people. So consider that. But I would start small and see if it works on a small scale and then expand upward as you've got a proven track record. Once you have a proven track record of earning income, it's going to be much easier to raise funds.
That's a good way of going. And the next question that we got actually relates to this next slide that we had here, because someone asked if you recommend using a career coach, and I forgot to mention that Basil is available for general coaching sessions. So you can see the prices up there, and you can go to the website listed down below if you're interested in doing that. And I know a number of clients who've worked with him either on career issues or for business formation issues. Just having such a broad range of experience, I think that he can be really useful, whether it's deciding on what your next profession will be, or deciding on how to form your next business, how to build it, how to grow a team of employees, how to train them, how to optimize your sales process, how to institutionalize your marketing program, all those sorts of issues that are relevant when you're starting a business. So I'll leave that up there. And here's Basil's contact info if you need to get in touch with him.
And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do you have any thoughts about working with a career coach and what
yes.
role that can play?
Yeah, let me say, I'm not really a career coach. I am a business startup advisor, and I have been a business advisor. Well, what's interesting about practicing law, as I did in San Francisco for so many years, was that I got to autopsy a number of business failures. Whenever there's litigation, it's because something went wrong. A business failed and went bankrupt. They couldn't collect from their biggest client who owed them a ton of money, and they couldn't operate anymore. The partners got into a dispute and sued each other. Whatever the reasons were for the failure, uh, I got to examine them. And as a young lawyer, if you get to do that, you really learn a lot about what not to do in business. And it's a great education in that sense. I do, for those people who want to do it, I urge you to consider a career coach. There are lots of people out there who do that kind of work. And there are also lots of people out there who coach individuals on improving their work performance in the job that they currently have, not necessarily in changing it. And I think that something can be learned for that, but you have to weigh the cost against the potential benefit. Generally, though, I do rely upon expertise, and when I need an expert, I go to one.
Yeah, and actually, you just remind me. I heard the name of a woman who was an attorney for a number of years, I think in real estate law, who recently switched over to being I think a career slash business coach, more of a career coach. So if anyone's interested in getting her name, I forget it right now, but you can email me afterwards. Um, Another question that we received was, in your opinion, what are the fastest growth areas for legal industry areas that you mentioned? You mentioned, and they say here, you mentioned document review, video, PowerPoint presentations. What is the hottest?
Ah, well, I would say that any company that services major firms on e-discovery and e-filing is going to be busy. But there are lots of other areas. And I think, I don't know if I went over the list of areas of law that I think are growth areas. Someday space law is going to be a growth area. Elder law and healthcare law are current growth areas. I think we talked about intellectual property,
BioLife.
BioLife law. Um, if you go to talk to a law school professor and say, what are the new courses in substantive law that are being taught? Um, One of the documented changes in law school education has to do with the course materials. I know that generally law schools are offering more and more clinics, actual training programs where students can handle real clients and assist them in developing their case and at the same time develop real time practical legal skills. Uh, I know Hastings offers 4 entrepreneurial law clinics, and they are in the area of high tech, BioLife, community businesses, and nonprofit law. Actually, even nonprofits can be entrepreneurial. But the list of substantive fields in the law, you could just look that up on the internet. But the ones I've mentioned, I think, anything to do with technological, interestingly, the highest paid lawyers in the country, at least statistically, are in Silicon Valley. So if that's where you want to practice law and you can get a job down there, by all means do it. If you can't, then you might consider going to work for a high tech company, not necessarily one that is a legal job, but I think that anybody with a law degree has proven that they're reasonably intelligent and hardworking, and you're going to have a leg up over everybody uh, everybody else that's not doesn't have a JD on any kind of a job, especially if it's a job that involves communication, reading, and writing. But the areas that I think right now, that off the top of my head, as fast growing areas of the law: social media, intellectual property, biolife, space law, science law. There are lawyers out there who do nothing but handle scientific fraud claims
That's
for
quite
for
narrow.
researchers. It's very narrow, but uh, science and technology are growth areas.
And there's, as they say, there's riches in the niches.
That's right. And healthcare law is always going to be big, whether or not Obamacare survives. Why? Because 18% of our $13 trillion GDP goes to cover healthcare. If you look and can categorize how the GDP is spent, you will find the biggest growth areas there. And when you think about roughly 40% of all of that $13 trillion is taxed at some level of government. Tax is always, I think, a steady area of law, and a very interesting one too.
Yeah.
I found to my own surprise.
I think we have time for maybe one more question here, and this question is, do you recommend doing contract law part-time while looking for, I guess it's a full-time job that is not practicing law? Do you recommend doing contract law?
Yes, absolutely. If you're developing your own skills and experience as well as contacts, and it may be that a lawyer you're doing contract work for has need for a full-time associate. In addition to that, there's an old saying that I think is so true. It's always easier to get a job when you have a job. If you're not employed at the time, it's just harder to get your first job. So, one program that Hastings has done now is to have alums hire for short periods of time graduates who don't have jobs. And I hired 3 last year, and all 3 got jobs almost immediately, although they did have to go out of the San Francisco area. But all 3 got jobs almost immediately. I think it took 2-3 weeks for the third one to get a job. So having a job makes it easier to get a job. So do any kind of work you can, especially if it's in the legal field or a particular area that you want to go into.
Yeah, good. All right. Well, thank you very much, Basil, for taking the time to do this, and we really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and good luck to you all. If you have any questions, feel free to call.
Good luck, everyone. Thank you.